Good morning and welcome to Church 180 this morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you are watching this video. Today we are going to talk about Romans chapter 4, verses 18 to 21. Romans chapter 4, verses 18 to 21. And it says, against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, and so became the father of many nations, just as he had been said to him, so shall your offsprings be. Without weakening in his faith, he faced the fact that his body was as good as dead, since he was about 100 years old, and that Sarah's womb was also dead. Yet he did not waver through unbelief regarding the promise of God, but it was strengthened in his faith and gave glory to God, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he had promised. And today we're going to talk about faith. You said, but usually when we talk about faith, we talk about Hebrews. Well, we'll touch it later. But today we're going to talk about faith. And if you look in the dictionary, the meaning of faith is confident, trust, assurance, conviction, hope, sureness, and acceptance. All those are the meaning of faith. You see, it's not one meaning. It's a few of them. Now, knowing Abraham, the verses that we read is the Apostle Paul reminding the church about Abraham. In Abraham, we know in Genesis that God called him and he told him, go, get out of your family, get out of where you are, and go to the land that I will show. Listen, if it was me, I would say, really? Mm-hmm. You want me to leave where to go where? Most of us will ask God that. Why? I mean, he's not telling him go to the next city. He's telling him pick up your wife and leave the house of your father. Leave what you have known until now. The Bible doesn't say it, and let's use our imagination. I'm sure that Abraham probably thought about it, because remember, he was listening to a God, not the God. And when I said a God, means that Abraham came from a land that he had many gods. So one of the gods told him, get out, go. And probably Abraham says, I probably had too much grape juice. Where I'm gonna go? I mean, I'm not a young buck. My wife is not that young as she was. So they didn't have the strength. But yet he says, okay, God said it, so let's pack, let's leave. But he didn't left by himself. He took his wife and his nephew. He could have left his nephew with his father. But the thing was that Abraham was responsible for his nephew. So he have to take him with him. And I'm sure that Lot being young says, you know, Uncle, I love you, but are you sure? You know, let's use the imagination. Bible doesn't say so. But Bible doesn't say so neither that he packed and left. So we have to think, you know, Abraham was a reasonable person. So we have to think, you know, he probably questioned himself more than once. And I'm sure when he went and told Sarah, the God, or a God, told me this and this, Sarah looked at him and says, you have been too much in the sun, Abraham. I'm sure she said it. But yet, not only did he pick up and left, God gave him another promise. That his descendants, no descendant, descendants in plural means more than one. He says, I will give you descendants. The Bible says that God told him, I will give you descendants as much as the grains of sand in the beach. Take just, you know, a handful full of sand. If you could count how many grains are in there, let me know so I could call the Guinness Book of Records. Because it's impossible to count each one of them. And imagine, God didn't tell her, I will give you descendants as much as is in a handful of sand. He told him, I will give you descendants as much as this grains in the sand. So I'm sure that, you know, probably after they leave, because I'm sure if Abraham will tell Sarah, oh, and by the way, that God told me this. That's it. In New York, there's a mental hospital. It's a hospital. They have a mental floor, and it's called Bellevue. And every time that somebody will come with, you know, kind of idea like, really? We told them we're going to call Bellevue on you. So I'm sure that if Abraham would have told Sarah, oh, and by the way, he said this, Sarah would say, that's it, I'm going with you nowhere. You're going to Bellevue. You're done. But I'm sure that Abraham took his time to tell Sarah, this is going to happen. And Paul says he was 100 years old. He was as well as dead, meaning he was so old that all what he was waiting was for death to come and pick him up. And Sarah was old too, which means it was impossible for her to conceive. Everything that the women have to conceive, have an expiration date. Let's put it that way. We have an expiration date. Sarah was way past her expiration date to conceive. And when Abraham told him that, she laughed. She laughed, and I'm sure that she laughed, one, because, remember, she didn't knew the God that have called Abraham. And she laughed, listening to her husband and seeing that he had put faith in a God that they didn't know nothing about. They have no idea who this God was. But Abraham already have a personal relationship with that God. It's just that Sarah needed to be pushed a little bit to also share the faith that he have. So we could say that we're looking at a few stages of faith. And it's not like it's, faith, stage 1, 2, 3. It's just that it's different stages of faith. And one of them, God said it in Matthew 17:20. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed. Have you seen a mustard seed before? That thing is really tiny. I mean, the first time I saw it, it was put under a magnifying glass so I could see it was a seed. That's how small is it. So God is not telling you, you have to have this huge faith. God is telling, all what you need to have is that little faith. That little faith. Now, it's very interesting that Jesus says, you will set, or you will tell this mountain to move. You know what he's having? This little faith. And asking literally a mountain to move. Of course, Jesus was paraphrasing. In this case, a mountain of problems. Because I'm going to tell you what, it could be this little big of problems to me. But to someone else might be a mountain of problems. So God is not asking you to have the faith that Billy Graham have. It's just asking you to have at least little faith. Abraham not only showed faith when God told him to get up and leave what he was going to show, but he also showed the faith when God told him that he will have descendants. Sarah, as I said it, in the other hand, she laughed. She did laugh. But besides Abraham, we'll see someone that walked with Jesus all his 3 years of ministry, that heard the same words and sermons that John and Matthew heard, that sat down at the Last Supper with Jesus. We're not talking about Judas. He's something else. We're talking about Thomas. He saw everything in those 3 years. He saw Lazarus coming out of the grave. He saw the daughter of Hyder coming back to life. And yet, when they told him Jesus have raised from the dead, well, he says, yeah, right. I will believe it, not only when I see him, but when I could put my fingers in the wound of his hands and in the wound of his side. Boy, talking about not having faith at all. He not only saying, when I see it, he says, when I touch it. Because I might think that I'm seeing him, but I need to touch it to make sure it's true, it's real. There's a lot of people, and a lot of us, when we are in certain situations, that we said, I know you're real, I just cannot feel you. And it's not that you are ungrateful, or do not believe. It's that as humans beings, sometimes we get overwhelmed with everything that come our way. And you know, one of the things that make it more overwhelmed is that you know how you feel, but you're hearing people telling you should not feel like that. You have to have faith. You have to pray a little more. You have to seek the Lord a little more. And sometimes in your private, you go, really, God? Really? I have faith. I just need to see it. I know you could do it. I just need to see it. So probably Thomas Teller, yeah, you probably not lying, but I need to see it. So his faith was very little, if not none. Now, as God proved himself trustworthy, we began to focus more on him than in our circumstances. You know, there was when I was growing up in church, there was a gentleman that used to go to the altar and start praying, but he didn't pray in a low voice. He prayed in a loud voice. And he will bring everything that have gone wrong, I think, for the last 3 years in the altar. And one day, me, curious, I asked him, so why you pray like that? He says, because I trust God. And if I say it out loud, I'm saying, I know that this circumstance I'm going through, but I know that my God is bigger. And I never captured that until I was older and went through certain things. And then I remember that man, and I said, wow, he was so right. Because sometimes we have to say, you know what, when your mom says, or in school, what did they tell you when they teach you something? Repeat it out loud, correct? Why? So you could hear yourself repeating it, so it could go into your brain. Sarah is an academy that is only in Spanish. In the kindergarten is 90% Spanish. And she's learning Spanish with an Argentine dialect. So the other day I asked her, how are you in Spanish? And she says, bien y vos. You see, we don't say y vos, it translates I'm well and you. We said y tú. So saying y vos, it was like, whoa, she's grabbing from the teacher. But that is what that school wants, for them to learn not only Spanish, but different ways of saying the same word. And she have to repeat the days of the week in Spanish. And she needed to repeat 1 and 10 in Spanish. And she said, oh, I got a sticker. And I said, so where you got that sticker for? Because I was able to count 1 to 10 when the teacher asked. And I said, but you know how to count to 20 in Spanish? Yeah, I know, but he only asked until 10. But she has so trust in what she have learned that she was able to say, but he didn't ask for more than 10. He said 1 to 10. So I count 1 to 10. And she knows now all the days of the week in Spanish because she got to keep on repeating them. So, and us, we sometimes need to be like children. God needs to keep on repeating things to us for them to go through our brain. It's not that we're hard-headed. Well, some of us are. But it's just that when he keep on repeating it, we remember it faster and more. Now, those of us who grow up in church, one of the first things that they taught us, at least in my case, was the Psalm 23. And we knew it, but we probably didn't know anything else of the Bible, but we knew that. And the story of the short man that went up in the tree, we all learned that. Joe is laughing because he went through that. And we remember as an adult, not as we read the Bible now, we remember it as they taught us when we were kids. Because it was something that was told to us over and over. Why? So we could learn how to trust God and how to focus more on His love and His power than in our circumstances. Another sample of faith, and probably this will be, if you might say, a second phase of faith, or probably a faith a little more, is the Roman soldier. I mean, there was two, but we're going to talk about one that went to Jesus and told him to go to his house and told him that his servant was very ill. Now, you don't understand, this person have a high rank in the army of the Roman Empire. For him to approach Jesus, not in the middle of the night, but in the middle of the day, not secluded like Nicodemus did, but when everybody could see him and approach Jesus, he was asking to have his head shot. Because that was giving Jesus a power that the Roman Empire and those religious people of that time didn't want Jesus to have. And not only did he approach Jesus knowing that his life could be in danger, not only his life, his whole family. Because that was the law then. You did the deed and everybody pays. Now, he approached Jesus, but he didn't say, come to my house, I will make a way so people don't bother you so you could go straight. No, he says, listen, I have people under me. And if I tell them go here, they go. And I know and I believe that if you say the word, he will be healed. That's faith. That's having faith. That's a phase of faith that probably a lot of us are in that phase. I believe, God, that you could do it and you will do it. Is it hard to get to that phase? Probably. Not for everybody. Probably somebody's hearing me and says, not for me. Great, wonderful. But probably for the person that is next to you, it's being hard to get to this phase. But they're getting there. Now, and we also have the perfect faith. I believe in him. I will trust in him. I will do what he said. I will act the way he said because he said it. We have the tendency to trust our parents no matter what, don't we? You do this and you go and do it because dad or mom says, I have to do it. But when God tells us, you need to do this, let me see, let me get a paper and put the pros and the cons of me doing what you said you want me to do. But we get to the point that we could apply or we could live in perfect faith. In Matthew chapter 9, verses 27 to 30, when you have a chance, you could read it. We find two blind men. And Jesus asked them one simple question. If they believe that he can heal them. God didn't ask, do you think I could heal you? He says, do you believe that I could heal you? And they didn't say, well, maybe. Or the other one says, well, we have seen you doing all the miracles, so what's the difference on this one? No. They answered yes. And he says that by Jesus only touching their eyes, right away, they became to see, and Jesus only said one simple sentence. Accordingly to your faith, it is done. You see, accordingly to your faith, you go into certain circumstances, and accordingly to the faith you have put in the Lord, accordingly to how you believe in the promises that God has given us, he will do it. He didn't say, well, if you have faith, I will do it. No. He knows you will have faith. He knows what you're asking. So accordingly to your faith, it will be done. The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., human rights activist, everybody in the United States know who Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was, said one time, the God we worship is not a weak and incompetent God. He's able to beat back giants' wave of mountains, bring down mountains of evil. The ringing testimony of the Christian faith is that God is able. That is the base of our Christian faith, that God is able. Do you want to grow in the faith? Spend time with God. You want to know him? Spend time with him. Ask him for you to trust more in him. Sometimes he knows us, and we could go, Lord, help me trust you in the midst of this. Help me to trust you. That's a very plain, simple prayer. When Peter became afraid of walking in the water, remember? That he says, "Oh, Master, let me go to you." And Jesus says, "Come on." And he was walking, but all of a sudden Peter went and looked at the side and saw the waves and said, "They're going to eat me," and he started sinking. Jesus didn't let him sink. Jesus reached out and cut him. Jesus don't let us sink when we are in our circumstances, even if we have little faith. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see." You say it doesn't say it's an assurance of what we hope. It says is a confidence in what we hope, what our hearts desire, when we are in the perfect will of God. And he says, an assurance, we're sure. We know it's going to happen, even if I don't see it now. Faith, no matter what stage it is, make us stronger, braver, and better. God bless you.